What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the KWWC to talk everything AEW, all the news and updates that we've gotten this week. I'm not going to do my Fight for the Fallen predictions just yet because I want to wait for the full card. I still believe that they're going to be announcing some matches before we get to the show on Saturday, whether that means a Friday upload or even if it has to be a Saturday upload. I do want to wait for the full card. That way I can predict the full card. With that being said, I'm going to go over some of the highlights of BTE, Road to Fight for the Fallen, and also the really good Chris Van Vliet interview that he did with the Young Bucks that had a lot of news in it. I really recommend everybody who hasn't already checking out that interview. I want to start, though, with the match announcements that we got, one on BTE and one on Road 2. On BTE, they announced it will be SCU versus the Lucha Brothers. It's going to be a fantastic match. I cannot wait for it. I loved how they set this up with SCU talking about wanting to put their name in the hat for best tag team in the world. They said that everybody talks about it around AEW, and SCU absolutely belongs in that conversation, and they are correct about that. The question that remains for me going into Fight for the Fallen, and it's probably going to remain past Fight for the Fallen, is who is going to be that team across the ring from Best Friends at All Out. There has been no match announcement in terms of another qualifier to be able to contend for the bye match at All Out. Really interesting that they haven't set this up. There is a world where you could justify it being Lucha Bros versus SCU. Certainly the Lucha Brothers, they didn't get a shot at Fyter Fest. SCU involved in the match didn't take the pin, so you could try that. I just don't love that because you still have tag teams on your roster when you talk about Angelico and Jack Evans, you talk about Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, who were confirmed as a tag team in that Chris Van Vliet interview. Even the Dark Order, who seem like probably the likely team that'll get it some way, somehow, that haven't had a chance to qualify for the match at All Out where you can get that bye. So really interesting that they haven't announced it. The match is going to be fantastic. Maybe it ends up where the winner does get to face the Best Friends at All Out. So something certainly keep an eye on. Incredibly excited for the match. The second announcement is a bit more interesting, and that is the Librarian Peter Avalone. By his side will be the Librarian Leva Bates facing off against Sonny Kiss. I'm incredibly excited to see Sonny Kiss in singles action for the first time in AEW, but the story here is Peter Avalone, the Librarians as a whole, being booked on this card. They were a big talking point coming out of Fyter Fest, really for all the wrong reasons. People are hating the gimmick. They do not want to see it anymore. What was really interesting, though, is how BTE opened acknowledging that fact, talking about it. Now, they did it in a very sarcastic, comedic way, saying that they're going to continue their push of the Librarian, and to some degree, that is true. Now, how we see them booked on the buy-in once again at Fight for the Fallen. I do think that this decision makes sense. You have to keep in mind that the crowd right now for AEW, I would say, is an incredibly smart crowd. It's a well-informed crowd about the product that they're watching. Most, if not all, watch every episode of BTE. They watch every single Road 2 episode. Now, that's not true for everybody that's checking it out on BR Live or the Fight app, however they're streaming the show. But a crowd can make a viewer at home care more. And here's why I think that matters. When Peter Avalone comes out with Leva Bates, what kind of heat do they get? The title of the last episode of BTE was Go Away Heat, if I remember correctly. And it's the idea that you do not want to see this wrestler or this performance, this act, however you want to label it, you don't want to see it anymore. It makes you not want to watch. There is a big difference. Think about MJF, right? Right now, maybe the biggest heel in wrestling. You might hate him, but you love watching MJF. If the Librarians are getting that go-away heat, it's a bad thing. But I think there's a chance that this smart AEW crowd might enjoy booing the Librarians. And if the chants are boring, or even if they start chanting go away, then AEW and the people in charge should absolutely pull the plug on this current gimmick of the Librarians. But if we get a full 5,000 people chanting similar things that we heard at Fyter Fest, but to a larger degree, such as Hooked on Phonics, We Can't Read, all of that silly stuff, as much as people might not like it, if the crowd in the building gets behind the idea of booing the librarians, then it might actually have some sticking power. It's something to watch for. This very well could be the last time we see the librarians. I don't think they're going to be stubborn about this as much as that's really what the joke was on BTE. I actually think that this is a calculated risk. If it is that go away heat, then go away. Do not run with this anymore. If the crowd has fun with it though, and it comes off well, you might have found something. And I think there's a better chance of that here because the match should be better. Peter Avalone is just a better in-ring performer right now than Leva Bates is. So I think there's some chance here. It's going to really, really be interesting to see how the crowd reacts to that match. That's really the most interesting aspect of that match as a whole. Before we get to the Van Vliet interview, I want to talk a little bit about some free agents that are rumored with AEW. It was kind of addressed at the beginning of BTE. Matt and Nick had their notepads where they said that they were doing some long-term booking, and you saw on Matt's notepad he crossed out Good Brothers. The Good Brothers in WWE just signed new contracts, and that is a team that for a while everybody thought was going to be making, at some point, their debut in AEW. They were on the, it's kind of on the record, well reported, I should say, that they were unhappy in WWE, that their contracts were going to expire in October, and they turned down new deals. They have opted against it. And I know I'm not breaking that news for anybody. The reason I bring it up, though, is when it comes to situations like this, where it's on the record that a team is interested, or a singles wrestler is interested in coming to AEW, why they choose not to just try and understand the landscape, because right now a big part of wrestling, and specifically AEW, is going to be that free agent market. And really what I think it comes down to here, the Good Brothers were offered 5-year deals. And you can have a conversation about whether you want to invest 5 years into the Good Brothers. Carl Anderson will be 45 when that contract is done. Gallows, I believe, will be 40 when that contract is done. You can have a conversation about that. The main reason, though, why I don't think AEW would go for that is it would have the Good Brothers then under contract longer than any of their EVPs. At some point, that will be feasible, but I don't think right now, not before they've ever run television, I don't think they're going to be handing out 5-year deals to really any talent. Maybe some megastars could be an exception, but I don't think that would apply here for the Good Brothers. And really, I think it's I don't want to say it's as simple as that. Obviously, they were offered some more things by WWE, but I really do believe the big disparity is probably that years, because I think financially they can match a lot of the offers that a company like WWE, or even if it's New Japan or Ring of Honor or Impact Wrestling, that they can match. But if someone's going to come with a 5-year offer, that could be a situation where AEW could see themselves losing out on some talent. So that's something to keep in mind for future free agents that we talk about. And I do want to talk about two more, a tag team and a singles wrestler whose free agency has been reported on some more this week. First is LAX. We talked about this a while back when it broke that their contracts expired. It's now been confirmed that they are done with Impact Wrestling. They are absolutely going to be at some point signing with a new company. It has been also reported that there's interest from AEW and WWE, so it will be really interesting to see where LAX ends up landing. One thing to keep in mind, and again, this is why this Van Vliet interview is such a must-watch. There was so much news that came from it. The Young Bucks talked about the tag team tournament that will be starting as soon as TV starts. Like, I do believe on the very first episode of Wednesday Night Dynamite, the main event might just be a tournament match. It could be maybe the first Young Bucks tournament match could main event the first episode of Wednesday Night Dynamite. I think that's absolutely in play. But they said that they've started to fill out the bracket, and there are some teams in there that not everybody knows about, and there's going to be some new teams in there, basically saying that as they filled out this bracket, every single name involved in the field is not currently on the AEW roster. That, to me, I think LAX is the most obvious team that would fit that description. The interest is well reported. I, at the moment, would really expect them to be in AEW at some point, maybe have a match at All Out, or even just debut at some point throughout All Out. I think you would want to showcase them before television if they do make that decision to come to AEW. One other name to mention free agency-wise, Johnny Impact. This really came as a surprise to everybody. Nobody was talking about his free agency. It just came out of nowhere. Some might know him better as John Morrison or Johnny Mundo. If he ever did come to AEW, he would be Johnny Elite most likely. This is a situation, though, where I do not think he is actually going to leave Impact. First of all, his wife still works for Impact. I believe she is their women's world champion right now. And she is contracted throughout the remainder of the year. I believe the report said so. Why would he really be in a rush to leave? They can probably make that decision together at the end of 2019. But also, really, right, if his contract ended a couple weeks back and he agreed to stay on through. They just had their big show impacted Slammiversary. If nobody was talking about this, then it's probably because Johnny Impact is looking to stay in Impact. If it would have been well known that he was a free agent, that various companies are trying to acquire his services. My expectations, he's certainly a name to keep an eye on, but my expectations are for at least the rest of 2019, he stays in Impact, but definitely worth checking out. We move on to the Van Vliet interview, and again, there was a ton of stuff in this interview. They talked about the idea of having a four big pay-per-views a year. It's unclear, though, whether that means that they're only going to have 4 pay-per-views or they're going to have 4 standout, they happen every single year pay-per-views, but maybe there's 10 total special shows and the other 6 could change in terms of name, location, date, all of that stuff. That wasn't really made clear, but they mentioned having 4 big shows. They talked about running a big show in London and how interested Tony Khan is in making that happen. They even talked about running Canada as well. They talked about the potential for an AEW video game. That would be amazing. Would love to see that. A lot of good stuff here. I'm going to talk about 3 main things, 2 things that are pretty solid, and then the other one is speculation. You can't help it, though. The first thing, PAC is coming to AEW. They confirmed it here. They said they are going to get that done. They are major fans of his, and they know that they will see him in AEW at some point. That is fantastic news. And honestly, there's really a case to be made that PAC not being at Double or Nothing is actually really going to be beneficial for them. Because now, whenever PAC shows up, it's going to be such a big deal. He's one of the best wrestlers in the world, whether he has a debut match at All Out, television, whenever it may be, whenever he shows up in AEW, it is going to be a big deal. Here's a date to keep your eyes on. I believe it is July 21st is Dragon Gate. They're going to be running what would be their all-out equivalent. PAC's match is already scheduled for that. It's going to be for his championship. That Dragon Gate championship is really what prevented him from being at Double or Nothing. I think it's really what's prevented him from being in AEW to this point. Totally understand it. You want to protect the legitimacy of that title. You don't want to be losing matches outside of Dragon Gate as the Dragon Gate champion. You can respect that. But if he does drop that title on July 21st, the doors fly open. He could be in AEW, I believe, for All Out if that happens. So that's an incredibly important result to keep your eyes on as an AEW fan. Second thing was a bit surprising. The Young Bucks were kind of talking about how other companies don't like them, and there's one company where we know that's the case, but then they also mentioned New Japan. And they said that New Japan hated them, and it even caught Van Vliet off guard, and you know, when you think about it, it makes some sense. The biggest stars, some of the absolute biggest stars in New Japan left. Not just their biggest foreign stars, right? Kenny Omega was the IWGP Heavyweight Champion going into Wrestle Kingdom. Cody Rhodes was the IWGP United States Champion going into that Wrestle Kingdom. The Young Bucks were in a Tag Team Championship match on that card. These were, again, not just stars as foreigners, but they were some of the biggest stars in their company. To lose talent like that, of course, is going to be unfortunate for a company, and also now they're competing against them to acquire talent. So it makes sense that they might be upset. The reason why this is, to me, news is the continued speculation of what a lot of people feel is inevitable, the partnership between New Japan and AEW. If there really are hard feelings over the Elite leaving and starting their own company, then maybe we never see that partnership come to fruition. I will say, the fact that we see Jericho performing at Dominion and likely going to wrestle Tanahashi at this year's Wrestle Kingdom, the fact that Moxley is preparing for the G1 and won't be at Fight for the Fallen this weekend and is currently the IWGP United States champion and maybe as well could be at Wrestle Kingdom. I mean, the fact that nobody's ruled out Kenny Omega at some point returning to New Japan is probably why this was so surprising. It does seem like to some degree there is a working relationship there, but maybe it really is just AEW giving their wrestlers more freedom than we've really seen a big-time company give before to pursue some other opportunities when they have the available time to go out and let Chris Jericho wrestle on Dominion or let Jon Moxley participate in the G1. Maybe it's less about a partnership between AEW and New Japan and more so a reflection on how AEW is treating their talent. Again, maybe down the road, time can heal all wounds, and I do think it would be incredibly beneficial for New Japan to pair with AEW, and it would also be, of course, great for AEW to pair with New Japan. But I think that is something substantial because, again, a lot of people have treated that partnership as inevitable, but if New Japan truly is a scorned lover, then perhaps we never see that come to fruition. The last thing, I said there were three things. Two things concrete, the last one is speculation, and it is going to be speculation surrounding AEW forever, probably, and it's CM Punk. They were asked about CM Punk by Chris Van Vliet, and they said, they were honest. They said, yes, we absolutely want him. They mentioned that Matt talks to him all the time. They went on to say, though, that right now the timing isn't right, and that's kind of just, it's really up to CM Punk to make that decision if he wants to commit to coming back to wrestling full time. And Van Vliet then followed up and mentioned, though, to the Young Bucks that they're in the position of power. They are executive vice presidents, where they can tell CM Punk, you only need to work once a month. We can work this out with you however you want to get it done. And they just started to laugh, and I started to speculate, and I can't help it. And here's the thing, and here's why the speculation is going to run wild. First of all, it's because everybody wants to see CM Punk come back to wrestling. And here's why I can't help it. The idea that now is not the time is ludicrous. It is absolutely ludicrous. Now, maybe the Bucks are saying that because they just are constantly getting no's from Punk, and that's just kind of, it's a turn of phrase, and that's just what they're saying. But if we're honest, there is no better time than All Out for CM Punk to come back. I mean, for AEW, it's the biggest show. At that point, it will be the biggest show they've ever had. It's the launching pad for television, for TNT. For CM Punk to return to wrestling, to AEW, in Chicago, there is no better time than that show. There just isn't. And the Young Bucks do feel like a pair of guys who love being in the know, if we're honest, right? And I can't get over just their laughter at the end of the follow-up question from Van Vliet. Again, I recommend everybody to watch it on their own and to comment down below whether I'm reading too much into this, or if you agree, or just if you think CM Punk shows up at All Out. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the idea of Punk showing up in AEW on this channel unless there is genuine news around it. But at some point, it was going to have to be talked about. The Young Bucks just talked about it on a Van Vliet interview, so why not now? Here's what I'll say. Yes or no question. Do I think CM Punk shows up at All Out? My answer is yes. I'll leave you with that bit of optimism. We'll be back again in pretty soon. Just do the Fight for the Fallen predictions, whether it be Friday or Saturday. And then I will also be recapping the show right here on the channel. So make sure that you subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below whether you think CM Punk is going to show up at All Out. And follow me over on Twitter. Link to that will be in the description. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.